Hey, Year 703, Mr. Herman here, and this is an introduction topic video which is going to introduce fractions and what they are. Hopefully you have seen fractions or some form of fractions within your life, but specifically within primary school. But this is just going to be an introduction to what fractions are before you start your skills within Central Assessment. So the learning goal for this video is just to know what a fraction is, just look into different types of fractions and to know the difference between what a numerator and what a denominator is within a fraction. The success criteria is to be comfortable with the terminology of fractions. We won't be looking into examples for this. This is purely just an introduction video, but the next video will be looking at different types of examples which I'll be taking from a Central Assessment. So what is a fraction? Hopefully by now you should be comfortable with the notion of knowing what a fraction is, but the notion of a fraction pretty much comes down to a question that was proposed many millennia ago when people were first discovering maths. And the question was, how do you represent a number that is lower than 1 but higher than 0? Lower than 1 and higher than 0. And higher than 0. And back in the day when maths was first being discovered and invented, numbers were just purely used for counting. When sheep and cattle were counted, the other had numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. But then as technology advanced and people were trying to look for ways to talk about a number that's less than 1 and greater than 0, they ran into a bit of a problem and they didn't know what to do, so they invented a notion of trying to show a way to represent them. And there are 3 different types of main ways that we use in modern mathematics. The first way, and what we're looking at, is fractions. And we'll get to how we can look into fractions. The second one is decimals. And the third one is percentages. And this is mainly used for quantities that are greater than 1, and we know that it uses that symbol here. But fractions and decimals were 2 different notions that we use. So for instance here, I've got this long rectangle and it's trying to represent a chocolate bar. And we wanted to represent, say, only this amount. Now picture you not knowing what a fraction or a decimal is. How would you represent this? And how would you show this as an answer to somebody and you wanted to show this quantity amount of 1 full chocolate bar? And this is where the notion of a fraction line has been discovered, or was discovered and invented. So when we write a fraction, it is split up into 2 parts, okay? We have a fraction line here. Alright, so this is representing a fraction line. And this has a specific name, it's called a vinculum. Okay? So we start off with a vinculum, then we have a bottom number, which is called the denominator. So in this instance here, we can see that regardless of how many pieces have been shaded, we know that there are 2 equal bits. Alright, so this denominator right here, represents how many parts has this 1 been split up into. Alright, and then the top number just talks about how many of those parts are we interested in, or what's the quantity of an amount from the 2 parts. In this case, we're only colored in 1 of these 2 parts here, so that 1 is, that's why the 1 is on the top, and that 1 is dictated by the name numerator. Alright, so all fractions will have a numerator, a vinculum, the split line, and a denominator. And so the denominator talks about how many pieces there are that's been split up into, and the numerator talks about how many of them have been shaded. And we can swap around what this half can be represented as a decimal. We know that this is also 0.5. And also as a percentage, it is 50%. But we'll look into this into later videos. For now, I want you to get comfortable with the notion of what a fraction is. Now, hopefully, you should be comfortable with this notion. We're going to be looking into the terminology of numerator and denominator within the next skill. But if you're feeling a little bit unfamiliar with how fractions work, it's good to just have this as a bit of a recap. Now remember, there are different ways of writing a fraction. If I like to have a bar like this, and I was talking about, say, that much of a bar, right? Roughly as an estimate, this looks like, doesn't look obvious now, but you can't say this is a half, because I know it seems like as though there are two bits, this one here and this one here, and one of them's been colored in, but this isn't the case. We're looking at equal bits. Okay, so this right here is incorrect. We're looking at equal bits, so this is considered as one of the equal bits. We have to see how many of these would fit into here. Now this is just very rough. It is not accurate by any true measure. Here we can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So altogether there are 9 parts, and we're interested in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 8 of them have been colored in. So this fraction here is 8/9. And that's all fractions are. It's split up into 2 parts, knowing how many smaller parts there are and how many of them are we're interested in, the numerator and the denominator accordingly. This concludes the introduction to fractions. I'll catch you guys in the next video.